So I've tested more than 20 different filters and lenses for the Osmo Pocket 3 over the last few weeks to figure out if lenses and filters actually help the image quality of the Pocket 3 or hurt its overall performance. So in this video, let's talk about what these different lenses and filters do, as well as compare the budget variations to their more expensive competitors to figure out which of these lenses and filters are actually worth the money.
You gotta just press record.
So why would you even think about purchasing a lens or a filter to begin with the Pocket 3? Why not just rely on the built-in lens that this camera already has? Well, there's a couple of reasons why you might actually want to pick up a lens. And the first reason would be to get correct exposure, especially when you're filming with manual settings in the Pocket 3. So if you're someone who likes to adjust the amount of motion blur you're getting in your image, you would want to control your shutter speed. And when you do this, you typically would need to lower your shutter speed to maybe something like 1/50 or 1/60, depending on your frame rate. And when you do this, you're gonna let in a lot more light that's gonna hit your camera sensor, and therefore you would need to be able to cut out light from hitting your sensor to get that correct exposure or lower your ISO, or maybe even both. So if you're someone who likes to film outdoors with manual camera settings, you might need to get a filter for your Pocket 3. And the second reason you'd want to maybe look into getting filters is to add some different creative looks to your Pocket 3 that aren't really achievable with just the standard built-in lens. There are a lot of different creative filters out there that you can use for your Pocket 3, and we're gonna cover a lot of them in this video, but just know those are the two main reasons you would even wanna pick up a filter to begin with: to cut out light from hitting your sensor or add some creative effects to your Pocket 3. Now let's do a really quick rundown of the different kinds of lenses that you could purchase for your Pocket 3. The first and the most common is probably an ND filter. That stands for neutral density. And all this really is kind of like sunglasses for your camera, where it's going to use a darker sort of filter to cut out light from hitting your camera sensor. And that's gonna give you that result of lowering your exposure to get the right camera settings. There's two common types of ND filters. There's a variable ND filter, which allows you to vary the intensity, where your ND has a little bit less intensity and lets in more light, or you can increase the intensity to cut out more light from hitting your camera sensor. And then there are hard stop ND filters, which don't have the ability to vary. It's just one preset ND amount. And usually it comes in some sort of pack where you have maybe 3 or 4 different ND options, and you just place the one on your camera that you need for that specific situation. The next type of filter would be what's called a black mist or a black diffusion, something like this. And all those really are some sort of diffusion filter that's going to soften the highlights in your image. So whether that's maybe for your skin tones, where it sort of takes off the edge or some of the sharpness that you might see in your skin tones, or maybe even some of the lights that you might have in your scene, it can soften up those lights a little bit by using that mist filter. The next filter type would be a polarizer. So a polarizer is able to reduce reflections in things like windows or glass, water, or even the sky. And when it reduces those reflections, it can also make colors look a little bit more vibrant and rich. So this is actually really similar to if you've ever used polarized sunglasses. It can kind of help with some of the reflections on the road or in the sky. It works the same way when you use a polarizer with your camera. And then several manufacturers also make what's called a blue streak filter. And this is sort of a creative filter that allows you to add some sort of blue streak camera flares into your image. And it's kind of a cool lighting effect. It's typically not something you would use all the time, but people who do maybe more cinematic vlogging or shoot music videos or something with the Pocket 3 might find this kind of effect helpful. And then additionally, there are 3 kinds of lenses that you would typically find for the Pocket 3. The first would be a wide angle lens, which is going to increase your field of view so that you have a wider shot for your Pocket 3. There are also several macro style lenses, which will get you kind of really close detail shots that you wouldn't normally be able to get out of the Pocket 3. And this will allow you to focus just really closely on subjects to get those cool details. And then the last lens type would be an anamorphic lens. So this is going to sort of compress your image a little bit so that you can then stretch it back out to an anamorphic aspect ratio, thus giving you sort of like widescreen cinematic looking footage, which a lot of people like to experiment with. So those are the main lenses and filters that you can purchase for the Pocket 3. And I've tested a bunch of different variations here from different sellers and manufacturers, and I've kind of pinpointed a few of my favorite in each category. So let's break down some of those options. Now for ND filters, the most budget option I tested was from Newer, and it was an ND 64 to 512 variable ND filter. And that only costs $16. And honestly, the results are pretty good for an ND filter. It is a little bit hard to dial in your ND by twisting this dial. It gets a little bit difficult because the filters are so tiny, and then you start sort of like bending your camera gimbal a little bit and it just looks a little bit weird. So I actually prefer this filter from Mingvin, which is a hard stop ND filter. So I just select which value is the right intensity for my current situation, and then I pop that on to the front of my Pocket 3, and then it gets me the result that I'm looking for. And this filter only costs about $30, and you get 3 different ND filters as well as a black mist filter, which is pretty sweet. I also tested a bunch of other filters from some of the name brand companies like K&F. DJI also has a magnetic 3-pack of ND filters, but they're like $60, so they're over double the price from this Mingvin set. And I didn't see a lot of differences in terms of image quality performance when I swapped between the two. So I'd probably recommend you actually go for this Mingvin set because it's more affordable and gets you essentially the same results. There is one pack that we purchased from Freewell, which was $70 for a 2-pack of variable NDs, but I will say that these felt like the best build quality, and image quality also looked really good. There wasn't a bunch of vignetting around the corners when I twisted the variable ND, which was nice. So if you want to get a more premium pack that has the variable ND, I think the Freewell is a really good option. Now, in terms of the black mist diffusion type filters, that Mingvin set actually comes with one. So if you went for that for $30, you get 3 ND filters plus a little diffusion filter as well. And I think that diffusion filter in this kit actually works pretty well. It does exactly what it is supposed to do. And there's a couple other options I tested as well. Obviously, DJI has their own variation of a black mist filter. I tried that one as well, and even though they do look a little bit different, I couldn't really justify spending an additional $50 for just getting the DJI mist option. I like that this Mingvin kit has one included for like a $30 price for the whole kit. So I'd probably also recommend you just go with the Mingvin option as well. There was one other mist filter that I tried, which was from this JSR kit, which didn't have a lot of reviews, so I was pretty skeptical about this kit when I first picked it up. And the mist filter here also worked just fine for softening some of those highlights, so this also would be a viable option. But I love this JSR filter for some of the additional lenses and filters that it actually comes with. So let's first talk about some of the wide angle lens options. And JSR has a wide angle lens option in their filter kit, and it actually provided the widest field of view that I tested, which was really nice. If I'm putting on a wide angle lens, it's because I want a wider field of view. So the fact that this one has the widest field of view available and there's not a lot of vignetting going on around the edges is very promising. I also tried wide angle lenses from Newer and K&F and DJI's wide angle lens that actually is included in the Pocket 3 combo kit. And performance wise, you didn't lose a whole bunch of quality with any of these lenses. They all still look fairly sharp, and it's not going to lose a bunch of image quality when you pop on one of the wide angle lens adapters. But in terms of field of view, the K&F filter and this JSR filter are what gave me the widest field of views. So I'd recommend you go with one of these two options. Now the JSR kit also comes with a macro lens, so you can get some of those macro detail shots. And if you've never used a macro lens on the Pocket 3, it is a little bit hard to use because the Pocket 3 screen is so tiny. As you're trying to look to get those macro details, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult, but if you're somebody who likes to do sort of creative shots, this could be a cool addition to your kit. The final lens that I tried was the K&F Concept 1.2x Anamorphic lens, and overall, I'd say anamorphic lenses are just kind of fine with the Pocket 3. I personally have no real use case for it, and I feel like it just doesn't give you all of the value or the look that you would be hoping for out of an anamorphic look when you pair it with such a small sensor like the Pocket 3 sensor. So it's not something I typically would use, but if you want to try it out, I thought the K&F's anamorphic lens build quality was pretty good, but the actual anamorphic result I feel like was just fine. And then lastly, I'll talk about a few of these creative lenses that some of these kits had. So K&F also had their own variation of the blue streak filter, which is going to give you those interesting blue streak sort of highlights or lens flares. And they're not actual real lens flares, it's just simulating a lens, a blue lens flare, if you have some more like pointed highlights in your scene. I thought this K&F blue streak filter's result was basically the same as the JSRs. Honestly, all of these people might be making them in the same manufacturers. A lot of them are made in China, so they might be all making the same things, just putting different branding on it. I don't really know. But again, because this JSR kit has all of these different creative filters, I'd probably just buy the bundle for about $40 instead of just trying to piece everything together individually from a different brand. I think this JSR kit is honestly pretty good. So I know these are a ton of filter options, but if I had to narrow down my choice to only have a couple of these for creative uses, The first one that I would get is an ND filter, and I would personally go with this Mingvin one. I like that these are hard stops, so you just pop on whatever filter you need. If you want a bunch of light cut out, just put the most intense ND on. And if you want a little bit less, then just choose one of the less intense ones. And you also get that diffusion filter as well for a nice soft effect for your skin tones or highlights. If you do want the best one, I really do think this Freewell one is the best one that I used. It is variable though, so it is one where you're gonna have to manually adjust your ND intensity, and some people don't like that. And I've always found that on the Pocket 3, it's a little bit difficult to do to manually adjust these variable NDs. And then if you want a pack of creative filters, I do like this JSR kit quite a bit. You get a nice wide angle lens that actually really increases your field of view, as well as some of these creative styles like a macro lens, and then a mist filter and a blue streak filter as well. So I think this is a great kit. So between these 2 or 3 options right here, you'll basically have everything you need creatively to get great results out of your Pocket 3. Now, if you want to check out 14 other accessories that we love to pair with the DJI Osmo Pocket 3, you can click or tap the screen right here to check out that video, and we'll see you in the next one.